The creation. At first, nothing and everything existed all at once. In every direction, the universe was filled only with the never-ending ocean called Nun. There was no land or light, no people or plants, only black, swirling water. However, the potential for everything was hidden within Nun's depths. Silence reigned, and nothing stirred for no one knows how long, until suddenly the teeniest of beings awoke. This was the god Atum, whose body slowly grew inside the ancient ocean. When he was finally ready, Atum separated himself from Nun. Atum emerged from Nun, sitting atop a gigantic pointed mound called the Benben. This was the first land, and it allowed Atum to stand up. In this way, Atum set in motion the beginning of all things. At first, Atum was content, amazed at his own existence. However, as he thought more and more, he also began to realize that he was lonely. His was the only mind that existed apart from Nun's, and Nun was quiet and mysterious. With whom could he pass his days? There was of course only one other being Atum could ask, so he shared his concerns with Nun, who existed all around him. This was the first ever conversation the universe had known. "I float here all alone and feeling nothing, Nun," Atum said sadly. "Who am I to share my life with?" "Your children exist inside you," Nun answered. "Simply raise your hand to your nose, and they will be born." So Atum did just that. He brought his hand to his nose and let loose a gigantic sneeze that echoed through the water. Looking down, he saw that his sneeze had released two beings. One was Tefnut, goddess of moisture, whose body was human, but whose head was that of a mighty lioness. The other was Shu, god of air, who looked like a man, and wore an ornate feather on his headdress. Together they made up a bubble of atmosphere inside Nun, balanced by their different roles as wet and dry. Atum was overwhelmed with happiness at the children he had created. Tefnut and Shu depended on Atum to survive, but Atum wished to let them live independent lives. So, filled with love, he took both gods in his arms and hugged them tightly, sharing some of his own life force with them. This meant they could exist apart from him and be free. Now that the three gods existed separately from one another, time itself also began, in order to record the passage of their lives. Nun, however, still held much more potential for life. Atum knew that light was needed for the gods to see, so he had placed a gigantic egg inside Nun. One day, the egg began to glow, and a loud crack rang out across the waters. The sun god Ra burst forth from the egg, shattering the shell into countless pieces that scattered far and wide. Ra had the body of a man, but the head of a magnificent falcon. Instead of a nose, he had a sharp beak, and his face was covered in lustrous feathers. Perched on his head sat a blazing sphere of light that shone more brightly than anything else in the universe. This orb was the sun. It was so precious that a venomous snake called a cobra had wrapped itself around the golden disk in order to protect it. The other gods marveled at the bright light it created. Meanwhile, Shu and Tefnut had fallen in love and had children of their own. First they had a son named Geb, then a daughter named Nut. Not long after he was born, Geb, whose skin was green and decorated with patterns of plants and flowers, lay down in the atmosphere created by his parents and became the earth. When he stretched out, however, the waters of Nun threatened to drown him. Quick-thinking Nut lay above her brother to protect them both. Inside her body, Nut held all of the stars in existence, and she became the sky. From then on, every morning she would help lift the god Ra over Geb so that the sun could rise each day above the lands of Egypt.